Welcome to the Learning Curve with Lapwai, where we explore the extraordinary journeys of remarkable individuals who have transformed adversity into triumph. In this episode, we have the privilege of diving deep into the inspiring story and wisdom of Susan Brown, a 5-star rated author, motivational speaker, legacy coach, and real estate investor. But Susan's remarkable journey isn't just about her rise from homelessness to success. It's about a unique approach to life, an approach that Susan calls thinking like a CEO. Today, we're going to explore how this mindset can help you navigate life's challenges and truly unleash your potential. If you have ever felt overwhelmed by the multiple roles you play, whether as a parent, entrepreneur, or someone seeking greater freedom in your life, then you are in the right place. Susan will share her insights on managing personal aspirations alongside family responsibilities and strategies to help you take control of your life in a way that leads to more peace, more success, and ultimately more freedom. Stay tuned for this engaging and enlightening conversation where Susan Brown will guide us on a path to thinking like a CEO and unlocking the greatness within you.
Hey, hi everyone. Today I would like to welcome you to my podcast and I would like to introduce you to my favorite person. And she is someone who used to be homeless, hopeless, and full of self-hatred. To someone who is highly successful, 5-star rated author, inspirational speaker, legacy coach, and a real estate investor. But most importantly, she's a homeschool mom. So you might be wondering, how can she handle so many things and balancing so many things while being a homeschool mom? All the children at home, most of the time we are already struggling, even though they go to school. But being a homeschool mom and handling so many roles at one time, wearing so many hats, you might be wondering, how does Susan Brown, which is the person I'm going to introduce you today, how does she handle this on a day-to-day basis? Welcome, Susan. Can you introduce yourself more and let our audience know who you are and so that they can get to know you better?
Yes, but first I want to thank you, Lapwai, for having me. And I want to encourage all your listeners to listen, get on her site, get in her world, get in her podcast, subscribe to everything she does because she truly has your best interest at heart. And, you can see on her site that she's all about injecting that fun into it. And I think that's so much we forget as moms, right? To inject that fun. So get in her world. She is where you want to be. So just thank you for having me. And it's an honor to be here. I wanted to start off with that. So I am now a 5-star rated author. My first book, 1 Year of Thankful Thursdays, has reached the hands of some well-known people. And one lady, I was able to put her review on the cover. It's the lady who created the first billion-dollar publishing company and was the president of the company that did Chicken Soup for the Christian Soul. So my first book was 1 Year of Thankful Thursdays, not going to show up with the fake background here. And then I have another book coming up called Bite-Sized Inspiration, because I think as moms, we just need quick things. So I like to have one sentence things in the day that I just dwell on over and over in my head to kind of keep me focused. So I was kind of inspired by that. You remember that book, Life's Little Instruction Book, that has just one sentence on a page? It's so simple. So that's what was part of my inspiration for this upcoming book. Then I've collaborated on another book called Reach Your Greatness. And I have a book coming out soon on the story of becoming my mom's caregiver through trauma. So yeah, I love writing. I love talking to people like this. And I love speaking. I think the reason I love writing so much is because as moms, we have 10 million tabs open in our heads at all times, and sometimes I can say things and be like, oops, meant to edit that first before that came out. So I think I like writing so much because I can go, it doesn't sound so I'll back out. Even with phone calls, I like phone calls, but if it's something, a little bit of a deeper conversation that I want to think through, sometimes I prefer text so I love to write. That just is how I love writing. I've been speaking more. I love going and encouraging women to take them from overwhelmed to overcomer. And so my husband and I actually just have been real estate investing for the past few years. He left a 20-year career for us to do this full time, and it's been the best thing ever. So change at any age can be a good thing. And we actually just moved into our dream home that we've been renovating the past 6 months. So yeah, that's a little bit about me in a nutshell. And my favorite thing to do is help people discover freedom. And I mean, some of it's financial freedom, but for me, it's more of a mental freedom, because I believe once we're free up here, that the capabilities that we can actually accomplish are literally endless, that there is no glass ceiling, that there is no ceiling at all. So my favorite thing to do is help set people free up here so that they can help lift them up towards the greatness they were designed for.
I do agree. And thanks so much for sharing and allowing our audience to know you better. And I have seen how you design those new houses or set up the new houses. It's like really, really beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I've been off social media for the past 6 months because we were so eyeball deep in it, working 16-hour days. So I've got a whole lot of different pictures and videos I'll be sharing soon on there, for people to get some ideas or inspiration. Yeah. So
that would be great. And you get your daughters involved in all your work as well?
Yes. We have 2 daughters, they're 14 and 16. And I swear I look at them and I see them as 4 and 6 still. I don't know how the time goes by so fast. Every parent tells you this when your kids are little and you're like, yeah. And then all of a sudden you're like, what just happened? So they're both taller than me. I'm the shortest one in the family. I'm 5'3". My 14-year-old's 5'5". My 16-year-old's 5'10", and my husband's 6'2". So I kind of just walk around the short one in the family, which is fine.
And then we have younger.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah. And then we have a coon hound. He's a hound dog, and he thinks he's like a little tiny Yorkie, but he's 60 pounds. His favorite place to be is up in your lap, knocking your phone out of your hand and touch me, pet me. It's all about me. So yeah, that's a little bit of our life. And I love cold brew coffee.
Oh, nice. So now that you have mentioned about writing books, reading, doing up houses, and managing the family and work at the same time. So how do you actually balance your personal aspirations with all these family responsibilities? Because it can be very challenging. And how can other parents learn from you and pursue their dreams as well, just like you do, and become so successful as well? So what are the strategies or guidance that you can share with the parents?
No, I love this question because first off, I actually think that balance is a myth. I'm not sure balance actually exists. I think that just like you have, when you listen to an orchestra and sometimes you hear the flutes really loud and then the drums are soft and then the drums go loud and you hear violins, if it was all drums all the time, you'd kind of be like this, right? It wouldn't be beautiful. You wouldn't be able to hear the other instruments. So I actually don't think I think balance is a myth. I think just like life is not this linear path where it's like, oh, here we were down, now I'm successful, now everything, it is like this, right? It's like this bizarre, twisty, turvy. But that being said, I think one of the things is just having an unrelenting hope and a reminder to yourself that wherever you are right now, like that's not your forever. And that's a simplistic thing to say, but I think you and I know this, likewise, that the more you learn, the more you maybe pay coaches or mentors, the more you learn this is actually this simple things that they teach you and that they remind you of, because these are all things we knew as a child, right? But as we start to grow older and we have life struggles and we have hardships or we have financial hardships or people die or real loss, we kind of just cave in and go, oh, okay. But I will share with you one of my number one tips, and this took me decades to learn. I'm 50 years young now. I just turned 50 this year, and I'm so excited to be here. I say young because I believe our words have power. And so I'm 50 years young. In the scope of eternity, that is pretty young, just 50. But this took me until I was I like to tell people I'm actually only 8 years old because I've only been free for 8 years since I was 42. But this next tip I'm going to share with you, probably I didn't learn until a few years ago, and it's literally changed my life. It's changed how I'm able to let things go when it's not going to, in order to get moved in this house in 6 months. We could do it in 6 months, or it could take us 3 years. We knew we were going to have to let some things go, and I'd have to be okay with letting those things go, right? Like I was saying, I wasn't on social media, but what's funny is in the midst of that, I had people calling me, can you do this speaking engagement? I'm like, oh. And the more we let things go, and I'm about to give you all the tip in a minute, the more you're able to see that some of those things were never in our control or meant for us anyway. But this is the tip, and this is a strategy. And this is one of the things I was telling you before you jumped on the call up, is that I love giving things away for free that I've paid so much money to learn, because I know it's so needed by so many people. But this is the strategy. And again, it sounds really simplistic, but we're going to really dwell deep on it for a minute. I'm trying to think which one to share and which one's more applicable right now. So you have to think like the CEO of your life and not the consumer. And this is actually, I think, for women, a very hard thing. And I don't say that because we're weak. I say it because everybody knows women are like the number one consumer in the world. We make most of the buying decisions, the purchases, whether it's groceries, whether it's online, right? So we are hardwired to be consumers, but we also make intelligent decisions. But the reason that this is so hard, I think, is because as women, I'm just going to say something I think all women are thinking. So we are not given permission by society. Sometimes we're not given permission by our families, whether that's our parents or our spouses or our children. And we are not given permissions by ourselves to say, hey, love, why, you know what? You don't have to do that. So I can look in the mirror and say, hey, guess what, Susan? You don't have to watch the news ever again. You're in control of your life. You get to allow. So the thing is that as the CEO of your life, if you think of your life like a desk, are you going to waste time on silly things? Are you going to get on social media and scroll for hours and hours? My husband and I were talking about this other day, is like people, oh, have you watched this show? Have you watched this show? And we're like, no. And they're like, oh, you should watch it. And we're like, okay. And we just have stopped saying, well, we don't really watch TV anymore. We don't have time for that, because we choose to fill our time with other things. And this is not a judgment against TV. Everybody has to have a decompression time. Like mine and my youngest daughter, one of our favorite things to decompress is to watch a little chick flick, a Hallmark movie, So again, this is nothing like Facebook or TV is inherently bad, but the way we use them can be. So if you think of yourself as the CEO of your life instead of the consumer, that means also it removes some emotion when your kids are misbehaving, right? And we all do it. I do it too. But it's like if your kids are misbehaving at any age, it's easy to be like, oh my gosh, why can't you just listen to me? I know what I'm talking about. I'm older. I've been there. But instead to think, okay, this is not happening at me. I'm not the consumer of this. I'm the CEO. And this can happen in your mind. You don't have to say it out loud. You see the child misbehaving. You think, okay, how would I correct that? And this is going to get touchy. If that wasn't my child, because sometimes we might tend to treat other children, people's kids better, or not be as rough as with our own children. So thinking like the CEO and not the consumer of your life, I could literally spend days talking about this, because if you'll spend some time dwelling on it, it literally touches every area of your life. So for example, during the 6-month hiatus of us redoing this house, I fell off the wagon with my workout plan, right? But that wasn't something that happened to me. That was basically a decision I made, because I was over here and I would, drop down and do some push-ups while I'm then doing things, or we would be using sledgehammers. And I chose to say, okay, Susan, for this hiatus, and also what you're doing when you're behaving like the CEO of your life is you're giving yourself permission to say, okay, I'm putting a pause. That's over there, and that's okay. And I'll get back to it. But it really changes how you view things, how you behave, and how you look at everything in your life, right? When you're on Amazon and you're scrolling, you're like, wait, as the CEO of my life, do I actually need that thing? Which, by the way, we have like a little jingle around Amazon Prime around. I love Amazon. I order from them all the time. But just saying, like, to think of things differently, whether it's your kids misbehaving, whether it's a business you want to start, whether something really sad and tragic happened, if you start to think like the CEO of your life and give yourself that permission to think like the CEO of your life, even if nobody else in your life does, that's okay, right? It's kind of like boundaries. I might have boundaries that I don't give certain people access to my head and heart anymore. They don't have to respect it, but if they're not respecting it, I can enforce my boundaries by simply leaving the conversation or leaving the room. So you don't have to wait. And this is important for women to hear because we're not given permission a lot. And we feel like if we take that permission that we're somehow being like not nurturing, but I actually think it's the opposite. I think when you behave like the CEO of your life, you're able to make decisions quicker and more effective and less emotional. And some of that I learned as my time as a paramedic. And that actually frees you up to have more time to be the fun mom, to be like, okay, it's fun mom time. Let's go. Let's go out on a dinner date together, or let's go shopping, or let's go play at the park, or, so that's a really, really, really big tip that I only learned a few years ago. And I don't do it perfectly. None of us do things perfectly all the time. But I always am, and I share that with my children. I'm like, listen, things aren't happening to you. Remember, they're happening for you. Think like the CEO. What can I do with this in my life? That's going to help me elevate. And when you think like that, then you're no longer trapped in not necessarily victim mode, but just like overwhelmed mode, if that helps.
Yeah, I do agree. And I love the part where you mentioned the band. You can't balance because just like the band, there are always louder sound, softer sound all the time. And
Right.
thinking like a CEO, I do agree with that. Totally agree with that. When you are thinking about, or when we are thinking about ourselves, like I'm the mom, I'm a housewife, or I can't do anything else but just a mom. And you tend to get attached to a lot of things. And whatever you do, you seem to be very attached, and you're easily triggered whenever you're attached to it.
Yes.
But if you think like a CEO, it's like, how do I get things done without feeling that attachment? It doesn't mean that I tell you to be cold-hearted or things like that, but how can you stand as a third party to view the things more, more fairly, so that you don't get attached and feel and do things according to your emotion, and then you get triggered because of that.
And I think a good visual, because I think a lot of moms like me are visual, that helps is I have a dear friend who is a counselor. She's amazing, like just a flat out genius. And she shared this visual with me one time. So this is not this is her genius. And I was like, oh my gosh, that is so clear. So she was explaining, if you're describing some trauma that's happened to you, like right now, I can talk about all the hard things in my past. And I can talk about them like they're happening to somebody else, or like the old me, not, have a panic attack, not melt down here now. But that's also time. So that's not, but the reason is she helped me see this is she said, give yourself permission. Oh, this is so powerful. It blows my mind. Unstrap yourself from the train tracks. The train isn't coming at you. Unstrap quickly. Go up on the hill. And now look down at the train. Now, what would you tell that girl? Now, help her get up, help her get to safety. And now you're watching the story happen instead of it happening to you. And I thought, like, I literally get chills, like, why every time I describe that, and I didn't do it the justice that she does it, but I thought, man, that's powerful. That's really powerful, especially if you're going through a hard time, to try to remember, hold on, I'm on the train tracks now, right now. I give myself permission to unstrap myself, step out of here, go up on the hill to safety, and look down on it. So I think that's a helpful visual, when we get overwhelmed, be like, hold on, I want to get away from this train. Let me go watch it happen, get that separate perspective. And to me, that's very helpful. I hope that helps somebody. So.
Wow. Yeah, I find it very powerful as well, especially when you take yourself out of the picture and try to visualize just someone else is in that situation, and what would you do if you are there to help?
Yeah.
And that's a great vision.
Yeah. And I think so much of it is, again, like you were talking about, I think as women, we're worried that if we behave like the CEO in our mind, even if nobody else knows what we're doing, that we somehow become unnurturing or unloving or unfemale. But that's not at all the case. I really think It enables us to be more fully free and present because we're not spending, 32 minutes trying to make a decision about something because we're so overwhelmed in our head versus, okay, Susan, I give you permission right now. Step outside of yourself, look at this, make a quick decision, and now gift yourself those 29 minutes back. So it only took you 3 minutes to make that decision. So I think of it as a gift to ourselves, and to our families and our loved ones. And it gives you so much more time freedom. And I actually dive into like a deeper kind of free coaching with that. That's actually part of that gift we'll talk about later at the Live Free checklist. And I go into like this little video training to show how to do that. But it's really, really powerful. Like I said, I could spend days talking about that because there's not a single aspect of your life it doesn't touch, whether it's homeschooling, relationships, finances, health, just thinking like the CEO. And CEOs aren't all nasty, are they? They're quick decision makers. And they decide what's best for the company, even if it's a hard decision, or even if you're like, okay, well, this is best, but it'll take some time to see the benefits from that, right? Sometimes we have to make hard decisions, like for our kids. I'm going to have to let them walk through this one because they weren't listening, so that years from now, they'll see the benefits from that decision. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And it's really true when a lot of people saying about like, okay, moms, you need to fill your own cup and all those things. But a lot of us are not doing that. And that's why a lot of overwhelm and, stress, depression, everything comes along. So in fact, this is why the vision that you mentioned is really helpful for moms to really stand out and visualize what will you do. And also to think like a CEO, you can't handle everything. You can't do everything. You have to assign tasks to someone else. You have to make that decision.
That's right. You have to delegate and elevate, because that's part of a CEO, right? They don't do everything. They hire it out or they delegate this or that, right? They're not one person running the whole company. I think that's another lie that we believe as moms too, don't you, Love? Why is that? Okay, well, we have to do all the things in order to be like accepted in our own minds or society's minds as a mom. But I was having a conversation with a friend about this other day. That's really just a lie, I believe, from the enemy, is that, well, today was a 1. 2 days ago, I had a 4, and tomorrow will be a 10. That sliding scale is a myth, just like balance is, because the days that I complete a book, that day isn't any more valid or special in the timeline than the day I was living homeless in my car, learning how to be independent and make hard decisions, right? Now, according to the world, because I believe the world has a warped version of success and freedom, they might say that. But once we give ourselves the permission to break free of that paradigm as moms, you're unstoppable. When you can be grateful for the bad days and realize that those are just as valid as the good days, that's when you're going to start to have that true freedom, that peace of mind. And because I love words, I love acronyms, and I'm sure most moms listening know what that is. But for those of you that have forgotten, like me, it's like when you take a word and you turn it vertical, and each letter of the word has a meaning. And I like acronyms so much because to me, they give words like that depth of meaning that I'm like looking for. So I have quite a few for free, but when I think of being free, I think finally redeemed from everyone's expectations. It's like,
wow,
no more.
Wow.
Okay. That mom doesn't like what your outfit is. Okay. That mom thinks your kid isn't doing as good in school. Okay. Like, it's amazing. And again, it's not a callous, okay, it's a, holy crap, I'm alive and I just get to live my life. This is incredible. What am I doing wasting time comparing? What am I doing wasting time trying to get somebody else's approval that doesn't pay my bills, that isn't raising my kids? So I like to think of free like that. I also think of free as finally realizing eternity is everything, because I believe when we think from an eternal perspective, it does make the things that we make such a big deal. You go, oh, okay, I can let that go. All right, that's fine. Doesn't have to be perfect, because eventually I'm a big fan of Dr. Benjamin Hardy. I don't know if y'all heard of him, but he talks a lot about, and this is part of how I like to think too, living in the future, and not in a like frou-frou woo-woo way, but he describes in one of his books, I can't think of which one, that he was coming home from like work one day. I'm probably going to butcher it, so if he's listening, forgive this, but he was coming home from work one day. He was like exhausted, just stressed, and just needed that decompression time. And one of his little kids came running up to him, and he was like, oh, I didn't have the energy to like play or whatever. And all of a sudden he pictured that child being 16 and maybe not really wanting to run up and play with him. And because he was thinking from his future self, made him all of a sudden be able to be, wait a second, I need this time with this child. So I think that's really important, because when we think from an eternal perspective and a future perspective, it really does make things a lot more simple here as far as, okay, I can do this, or wow, that's not as important as I thought it was, so I'm going to let that go.
Yeah. And I do have seen this kind of like advertisement as well, where the young dad is too tired to play with the young son. And then fast forward to like 20 years later, and then the dad becomes an old man and the son has no time for the father. And that's where he realized that, oh, because I didn't nurture him the way it should be.
Yeah, because we get too caught up in the present. We're so obsessed with everything being just right now that we're actually missing it.
Correct.
We're missing it because we're so obsessed with right now. We're not thinking, not thinking long term, like, okay, you have to get this grade on this test so you can get into. I don't mean like that. I mean, think, and not in a depressing rabbit hole way, but as in a gratitude way. Think at the end of your life, like, when I look back on this, what am I going to want to see? Am I going to want my child to know how greatly I loved them and cheered for them? Or is it going to matter to me more that the grades were exactly what they should be? Guarantee you it's going to be the former.
Yeah.
We're not going to be, we're never going to think, man, I wish I had worked more. I wish I had, got that kid got better grades, or I had got that better car. Like, none of those things are going to matter. So why do we let them matter now?
True. Yeah, that's a great vision.
Thank you for joining us on this illuminating journey with Susan Brown. Her wisdom and perspective have been nothing short of transformative, offering us the powerful concept of thinking like a CEO to navigate the complexities of life with grace and purpose. But the story doesn't end here. We're just getting started. In part 2 of this incredible conversation, Susan will delve deeper into practical steps for implementing the CEO mindset in your own life. You'll learn how to delegate, prioritize, and make decisions that truly reflect your values and long-term vision. So stay tuned for the next episode, where we'll continue this inspiring exploration with Susan Brown. If you have ever yearned for more balance, freedom, and fulfillment, you won't want to miss this. Remember to subscribe to our podcast, The Learning Curve with Lapwai, so you can catch every insightful episode as soon as it's released. In the meantime, go out there and start thinking like a CEO in your own life. We'll see you in part 2.